Now,
Yes, we.
okay. All right, everybody, we're recording now. And we're glad to have whoever can come tonight. We're so happy to see you. Jai Krishna's here. That's a party. We know we got a party now. He's gone again. So we may or may not lose. We're having some bad connections, unfortunately. We don't know why. But I'm recording on this computer. So I'm going to start the reading and then I'm going to ask whoever else is here. Here comes Rakesh. So they'll be able to join in here in a minute. This is Canto 6, Chapter 1 is what we're reading tonight. There's 3 chapters that we'll be reading in this series about Ajamil. And it's a wonderful, wonderful story. Hey, Rakesh, good to see you. All right, be ready to read. We're just getting ready to get started. And the class is on Chapter 6. Excuse me, yeah, Canto 6, Chapter 1. That's what I meant to say. So I'll start out with pranams. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devim Gauravani Paricharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyat Yareshitarane. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shivasti Gauda Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 1. This is the life of Ajamil. And in text 1, I'll read a few. There's about 50 verses here, so maybe we'll all take 10 or so apiece. Maharaj Pariksit said, O my Lord, O Sukadeva Goswami, you have already described in the second canto the path of liberation, Vritti Marga. By following that path, one can certainly become elevated gradually to the highest planetary system, Brahmaloka, from which one is promoted to the spiritual world along with Lord Brahma. Thus, one's reputation of birth and death in the material world, or repetition, it ceases. O great sage, Sukadeva Goswami, unless the living entity is freed from the infection of the material modes of nature, he receives different types of bodies in which to enjoy or suffer, and according to the body, he is understood to have various inclinations. By following these inclinations, he traverses the path called Pravritti Marg, by which one may be elevated to the heavenly planets, as you have already described in the third canto. You have also described at the end of the fifth canto the varieties of hellish life that result from impious activities. And you have described in the fourth canto the first Manvantara, which was presided over by Swayambhuva Manu, the son of Lord Brahma. My dear Lord, you have described the dynasties and characteristics of King Priyavrata and King Uttanapad. The Supreme Personality of Godhead created this material world with various universes, planetary systems, planets, and stars, with varied lands, seas, oceans, mountains, rivers, gardens, and trees, all with different characteristics. These are divided among this planet, Earth, the luminaries in the sky, and the lower planetary systems. You have very clearly described these planets and the living entities who live on them. O greatly fortunate and opulent Sukadeva Goswami, now kindly tell me how human beings may be saved from having to enter into hellish conditions in which they suffer terrible pains. Sukadeva Goswami replied, my dear king, if before one's next birth, whatever impious acts one has performed in this life with his mind, words, and body are not counteracted through proper atonement according to the description of the Manu Samhita and other Dharma Shastras, one will certainly enter the hellish planets after death and undergo terrible suffering, as I have previously described to you. Therefore, before one's next death comes, as long as one's body is strong enough, one should quickly adopt the process of atonement according to Shastra. Otherwise, one's time will be lost and the reactions of his sins will increase. As an expert physician diagnoses and treats a disease according to its gravity, one should undergo atonement according to the severity of one's sins. Maharaj Pariksit said, one may know that sinful activity is injurious for him because he actually sees that a criminal is punished by the government and rebuked by people in general. And because he hears from scriptures and learned scholars that one is thrown into hellish conditions in the next life for committing sinful acts. Nevertheless, in spite of such knowledge, one is forced to commit sins again and again, even after performing acts of atonement. Therefore, what is the value of such atonement? Sometimes one who is very alert so as not to commit sinful activity is victimized by sinful life again. I therefore consider this process of repeated sinning and atoning to be useless. It is like the bathing of an elephant, where an elephant cleanses itself by taking a full bath, but then throws dust over its head and body as soon as it returns to the land. So text 11, who would like to pick that up? Anybody? Text 11. Going once? Going twice? There we go. Thank you, Rakesh.
All right. Can you hear me?
I hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Text 11. Shukadev Goswami, the son of Vedavyas, answered, My dear king, since acts meant to neutralize impious actions are also fruitive, they will not release one from the tendency to act fruitively. Persons who subject themselves to the rules and regulations of atonement are not at all intelligent. Indeed, they are in the mode of darkness. Unless one is freed from the mode of ignorance, trying to counteract one action through another is useless because this will not uproot one's desires. Thus, even though one may superficially seem pious, he will undoubtedly be prone to act impiously. Therefore, real atonement is enlightenment and perfect knowledge, Vedanta, by which one understands the supreme absolute truth. Excuse me for just 2 seconds. I have to close the door. I'm getting feedback from my wife's phone, Eunice's phone.
Okay. No problem.
Okay.
There you go.
My dear king, if a diseased person eats the pure, uncontaminated food prescribed by a physician, he is gradually cured, and the infection of disease can no longer touch him. Similarly, if one follows the regulative principles of knowledge, he gradually progresses toward liberation from material contamination. To concentrate the mind, one must observe a life of celibacy and not fall down. One must undergo the austerity of voluntarily giving up sense enjoyment. One must then control the mind and senses, giving charity, be truthful, clean and non-violent, follow the regulative principles, and regularly chant the holy name of the Lord. Thus, a sober and faithful person who knows the religious principles is temporarily purified of all sins performed with his body, words, and mind. These sins are like the dried leaves of creepers beneath a bamboo tree, which may be burned by fire, although their roots remain to grow again at the first opportunity. Only a rare person who has adopted complete, unalloyed devotional service to Krishna can uproot the weeds of sinful actions with no possibility that they will revive. He can do this simply by discharging devotional service, just as the sun can immediately dissipate fog by its rays. My dear king, if a sinful person engages in the service of a bona fide devotee of the Lord, and thus learns how to dedicate his life unto the lotus feet of Krishna, he can be completely purified. One cannot be purified merely by undergoing austerity, penance, brahmacharya, and the other methods of atonement I have previously described. The path followed by pure devotees who are well behaved and fully endowed with the best qualifications is certainly the most auspicious path in this material world. It is free from fear, and it is authorized by the Shastras. My dear king, as a pot containing liquor cannot be purified even if washed in the waters of many rivers, non-devotees cannot be purified by processes of atonement, even if they perform them very well. Although not having fully realized Krishna, persons who have even once surrendered completely unto his lotus feet and who have become attracted to his name, form, qualities, and pastimes are completely freed of all sinful reactions, for they have thus accepted the true method of atonement. Even in dreams, such surrendered souls do not see Yamaraj or his order carriers, who are equipped with ropes to bind the sinful. In this regard, learned scholars and saintly persons describe a very old historical incident involving a discussion between the order carriers of Lord Vishnu and those of Yamaraj. Please hear of this from me. This chapter has 68 verses, so I could read a few more. Is that
Yes,
okay?
please. Yes, please read a few more, definitely.
In the city known as Kanyakubja, there was a Brahmin named Ajamil, who married a prostitute maidservant and lost all his Brahminical qualities because of the association of that low-class woman. This fallen Brahmin, Ajamil, gave trouble to others by arresting them, by cheating them in gambling, or by directly plundering them. This was the way he earned his livelihood and maintained his wife and children. My dear king, while he thus spent his time in abominable, sinful activities to maintain his family of many sons, 88 years of his life passed by. That old man, Ajamil, had 10 sons, of whom the youngest was a baby named Narayan. Since Narayan was the youngest of all the sons, he was naturally very dear to both his father and his mother. Because of the child's broken language and awkward movements, old Ajamil was very much attached to him. He always took care of the child and enjoyed the child's activities. When Ajamil chewed food and ate it, he called the child to chew and eat. And when he drank, he called the child to drink also. Always engaged in taking care of the child and calling his name, Narayan, Ajamil could not understand that his own time was now exhausted and that death was upon him. When the time of death arrived for the foolish Ajamil, he began thinking exclusively of his son Narayan. Okay, I can stop there.
Okay. Anybody else who would like to read?
I would like to try if I could stay connected.
Yeah, you doing good right
I,
now?
well, I don't know. I keep coming on and off, on and off. I reconnected 5 times. I
Well,
don't even
just
know where we're at.
okay. What verse are we on?
28,
Number
Yeah,
28.
chapter
okay.
1, Canto
Yeah,
6.
yeah, yeah. Okay, listen. If I fall off, I'm sorry. It's just a horrible connection, guys.
No problem.
Okay, so it's. Let me see. Hold on. Ajamil then saw 3 awkward persons with deformed bodily features, fierce, twisted faces, and their hair standing.
Maybe he's gone again. He's gone again. Poor buddy. He's down in uh where Dominican Republic. So sometimes they don't even have power, you know. So he's doing the best he can. We appreciate him very, very much. Is there anybody else that'd like to pick up where he left off? Text 28, 29.
I can read for a while then.
Okay, please.
Okay. I might as well start on 29 then, because he didn't get far, did he?
No, he didn't.
Unfortunately. Ajamil then saw 3 awkward persons with deformed bodily features, fierce, twisted faces, and hair standing erect on their bodies. With ropes in their hands, they had come to take him away to the abode of Yamaraj. When he saw them, he was extremely bewildered because of attachment to his child who was playing a short distance away. Ajamil began to call him loudly by his name. Thus, with tears in his eyes, he somehow or other chanted the holy name of Narayan. My dear Kim, the order carriers of Vishnu, the Vishnu Dutas, immediately arrived when they heard the holy name of their master from the mouth of the dying Ajamil, who had certainly chanted without offense, because he had chanted in complete anxiety. The order carriers of Yamaraj were snatching the soul from the core of the heart of Ajamil, the husband of the prostitute. But with resounding voices, the messengers of Lord Vishnu, the Vishnu Dutas, forbade them to do so. When the order carriers of Yamaraj, the son of the sun god, were thus forbidden, they replied, "Who are you, sirs, that you have the audacity to challenge the jurisdiction of the Yamaraj. I should try and do a fierce voice. I don't have to do that.
Yeah, you
Right,
should.
you sirs that have the audacity to challenge the jurisdiction of Yamaraj. You
Very good.
sirs, whose servants are you? Where have you come from? And why are you forbidding us to touch the body of Ajamil? Are you demigods from the heavenly planets? Are you sub-demigods? Or are you the best of devotees? The order carriers of Yamaraj said, your eyes are just like the petals of a lotus flowers, dressed in yellow silken garments, decorated with garlands of lotuses, wearing very attractive helmets on your heads. Oh God, my voice is gone. I can't do that voice anymore.
You can't be a demon no matter how much you try. You're a devotee.
No,
So
I
don't
can't
try
keep
it.
it up.
Don't try it.
Right, then we got lotuses. And wearing very attractive helmets on your heads and earrings on your ears, you all appear fresh and youthful. Your arms are decorated with bows and quivers of arrows, and with swords, clubs, conch shells, discs, and lotus flowers. Your effulgence has dissipated the darkness of this place with extraordinary illumination. Now, sirs, why are you obstructing us? Sukadev Goswami continued, being thus addressed by the messengers of Yamaraj, the servants of Vasudev smiled and spoke the following words in voices as deep as the sound of rumbling clouds. The blessed messengers of Lord Vishnu, the Vishnu Dutas, said, if you are actually servants of Yamaraj, you must explain to us the meaning of religious principles and the symptoms of irreligion. What is the process of punishing others? Who are the actual candidates for punishment? Are all karmis engaged in fruitive activities punishable, or only some of them? The Yamadutas replied, that which is prescribed in the Vedas constitutes dharma, the religious principles, and the opposite of that is irreligion. The Vedas are directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, and are self-born. This we have heard from Yamaraj. The supreme cause of all causes, Narayan, is situated in his own abode in the spiritual world, but nevertheless he controls the entire cosmic manifestation according to the three modes of material nature, Sattva Guna, Rajaguna, and Tamaguna. In this way, all living entities are awarded different qualities, different names, such as Brahmana, Kshatriya, and Vaishya, different duties according to the Varna Ashram institution, and different forms. Thus, Narayan is the cause of the entire cosmic manifestation. The sun, fire, sky, air, demigods, moon, every evening, day, night, direction, water, land, and Supersoul himself all witness the activities of the living entities. The candidates for punishment are those who are confirmed by these many witnesses who have deviated from their prescribed regulative duties. Everyone engaged in fruitive activities is suitable to be subjected to punishment according to his sinful acts. O inhabitants of Vaikuntha, you are sinless, but those within this material world are all karmis, whether acting piously or impiously. Both kinds of action are possible for them because they are contaminated by the three modes of material nature and must act accordingly. One who has accepted a material body cannot be inactive, and sinful action is inevitable for one acting under the modes of material nature. Therefore, all the living entities within the material world are punishable. In proportion to the extent of one's religious or irreligious actions in this life, one must enjoy or suffer the corresponding reactions in his karma in the next. O best of the demigods, we can see three different varieties of life which are due to the contamination of the three modes of material nature. The living entities are thus known as peaceful, restless, and foolish, as happy, unhappy, or in between, or as religious, irreligious, or semi-religious. We can deduce that in the next life, these three kinds of material nature will similarly act. Should I continue, or did you want someone else?
Well, I was just looking to see. Jai Krishna can't get back on. He's having a problem. He's texting me right now.
Oh,
So
okay.
if there's anyone else who would like to read, we've got about another 20 verses.
I
So
can continue for
huh?
a bit. Shall I continue for a bit then?
If you'd like, yeah,
And then maybe Rakesh or yourself can take over.
that's fine.
Okay. Just as springtime in the present indicates the nature of springtime in the past and future, so this life of happiness, distress, or a mixture of both gives evidence concerning the religious and irreligious activities of one's past and future lives. The omnipotent Yamaraj is as good as Lord Brahma, for while situated in his own abode or in everyone's heart, like the Paramatma, he mentally observes the past activities of a living entity and thus understands how the living entity will act in future lives. As a sleeping person acts according to the body manifested in his dreams and accepting it to be himself, so one identifies with his present body, which he acquired because of his past religious or irreligious actions, and is unable to know his past or future lives. Above the five senses of perception, the five working senses, and the five objects of the senses is the mind, which is the 16th element. Above the mind is the 17th element, the soul, the living being himself, who is in cooperation with the other 16, enjoys the material world alone. The living being enjoys three kinds of situations, namely happy, distressful, and mixed. The subtle body is endowed with 16 parts, the five knowledge acquiring senses, the five working senses, the five objects of sense gratification, and the mind. This subtle body is an effect of the three modes of material nature. It is composed of insurmountable strong desires, and therefore it causes the living entity to transmigrate from one body to another in human life, animal life, and life as a demigod. When the living entity gets the body of a demigod, he is certainly very jubilant. When he gets a human body, he is always in lamentation. And when he gets the body of an animal, he is always afraid. In all conditions, however, he is actually miserable. His miserable condition is called samsriti, or transmigration in material life. I'll stop there then.
Okay, yeah, Rakesh, you pick up again.
Okay, the Eunice is also listening if she wants to
That's
read.
fine. Yeah, however you want to do, it's fine.
Um, am I on?
Yes.
Yes, you're sounding good.
Okay. So we stop in the material life. So what, text 52?
Yeah, I think it's 52. Yep, 52.
52. The foolish embodied living entity, inept at controlling his senses and mind, is forced to act accordingly to the influence of the modes of material nature against his desires. He is like a silkworm that uses its own saliva to create a cocoon and then becomes trapped in it with no possibility of getting out. The living entity traps himself in a network of his own fruitive activities and then can find no way to release himself. Thus, he is always bewildered and repeatedly he dies. Not a single living entity can remain unengaged even for a moment. One must act by his natural tendencies according to the three modes of material nature, because these natural tendencies forcibly makes him work in a particular way. The primitive activities a living being performs, whether pious or impious, are the unseen cause for the fulfillment of his desires. This unseen cause is the root for the living entity's different bodies. Because of his intense desire, the living entity takes birth in a particular family and receives a body which is either like that of his mother or like that of his father. The gross and subtle bodies are created according to his desire. Since the living entity is associated with material nature, he is in an awkward position. But if in the human form of life he is taught how to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotee, this position can be overcome. In the beginning, this Brahmana called Ajamila studied all the Vedic literatures. He was a reservoir of good character, good conduct, and good qualities. Firmly established and executing all the Vedic injunctions, he was very mild and gentle, and he kept his mind and senses under control. Furthermore, he was always truthful. He knew how to chant the Vedic mantras, and he was also very pure. Ajamila was very respectful to his spiritual master, the fire god, guests, and elderly members of his household. Once this Brahman household, indeed, he was free from false prestige. He was upright, benevolent to all living entities, and well behaved. He would never speak nonsense or envy anyone. Once this Brahman Ajamila, following the order of his father, went to the forest to collect fruit, flowers, and two kinds of grass called samit and kusa. On the way home, he came upon a Sudra, a very lasty fourth-class man who was shamelessly embracing and kissing a prostitute. The Sudra was smiling, singing, and enjoying as if this were proper behavior. Both the Sudra and the prostitute were drunk. The prostitute's eyes were rolling in intoxication, and her dress had become loose. Such was the condition in which Ajamila saw them. The Sudra, his arm decorated with turmeric powder, was embracing the prostitute. When Ajamila saw her, the dormant lusty desire in his heart awakened, and in illusion he fell under their control. As far as possible, he patiently tried to remember the instructions of the sastras, not even to see a woman. With the help of this knowledge and his intellect, he tried to control his lusty desires. But because of the force of Cupid within his heart, he failed to control his mind. In the same way that the sun and moon are eclipsed by a low planet, the Brahman lost all his good sense. Taking advantage of this situation, he always thought of the prostitute, and within a short time, he took her as a servant in his house and abandoned all the regulative principles of the Brahman. Thus, Ajamila became spending whatever money he has inherited from his father to satisfy the prostitute with various material presentations so that she would remain pleased with him. He gave up all his Brahmanical activities to satisfy the prostitute. Because his intelligence was pierced by the lustful glance of the prostitute, the victimized Brahman, Ajamila, engaged in sinful acts in her association. He even gave up the company of his very beautiful young wife, who came from a very respectable Brahman family. Although born of Brahman family, this rascal, bereft of intelligence because of the prostitute association, earned money somehow or other, regardless of whether properly or improperly, and used it to maintain the prostitute's sons and daughters. This Brahman irresponsibly spent his long lifetime transgressing all the rules and regulations of the Holy Scripture, living extravagantly and eating food prepared by a prostitute. Therefore, he is full of sins, he is unclean, and is addicted to forbidden activities. This man Ajamila did not undergo atonement. Therefore, because of his sinful life, he must take him into presence of Yamaraj for punishment. There, according to the extent of his sinful acts, he will be punished and thus purified. That's the last one.
That's the last one, yeah. That's good. Thank you. You did a very good job of that. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we love hearing Rakesh too. It's good. Oh, good. We really appreciate you guys so much. Are there any questions or comments or points or elucidations that you guys would like to present? Think about it. And if you think about it as I'm making comments, you're welcome to interject or interrupt or raise your hand or just butt in. How about that? All right. So the first thing that comes to mind when I hear about this situation is it just said in one of the previous verses, I don't know which one it was, but it just said that the subtle body is made of insurmountable desires caused by the three modes of material nature and their influence upon the living entity. It just said that. Okay? So when we think about that, it reminds me of the verse that Krishna says in 327, Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. And that means the bewildered spirit soul under the influence of the three modes of material nature thinks himself the doer of these activities, which are in actuality carried out by nature. So what we find is that we are compelled, impelled, by these desires, which are insurmountable. It's not that at some point we're going to be able to overcome these desires. So these desires have to be dovetailed in Krishna's service for them to be perfected. There's no possibility that the living entity could be inactive even for a moment, it says in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna said. It's not possible. The living entity must be active at every moment. So these people who are trying to become voidist, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. There's no such thing as voidism. Not really. You can't truly empty desires. You can't truly empty the mind. You can't truly empty these things. It's always rivers flowing into the stream, but hopefully stream flowing into the ocean, but the ocean remains undisturbed. But those things are coming at every moment still. So the process of bhakti yoga is to dovetail our natural proclivity for desiring things and yoke them with Krishna's desire. And in that way, we're karma free. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how many austerities, penances, all the other things Brahmacharya talked about, busy collecting items for sacrifice, making the sacrifice for temporary gain is called karma kanda, or the desire for fruit results in the world, or jnana kanda. Jnana kanda also means to develop knowledge and speculative knowledge about God and to have some prowess in that way. So the idea here is that none of those will actually purify a person more than just temporarily. So in this chapter, it says that what's the use of it? What's the use of it? It's like an elephant. Elephant goes, takes a bath, comes out, throws dirt all over itself again. So if we're doing that again and again and again and again, we can atone. We must atone, actually. We must atone. But the point is that when we do it with karma kanda and jnana kanda, really what we're doing is temporary atonement. We're just walking back out in the environment and we're becoming filthy again. So this karma has to be removed before the next birth, it says in this chapter. That if we don't remove this, then we're marked to meet Yamaraj. And Yamaraj is the Lord of justice. Actually, it says that he is just like the super soul. He's witnessing everyone's activities, right? So it's also the sky, the earth, the moon, the water, the super soul in the body. All these things are witnessing everyone's activities and they're recording them. So there's no way to escape our karma. There's no way to hide from Krishna. There's no place you can go in the universe and not be seen by the Lord, his eyes. Not possible. So we have to actually understand that our job then would become to become permanently purified, not temporarily purified, like with these karma kanda activities, which are designed for some benefit in the material world. Give me a better birth, give me more money, give me a more beautiful wife, a bigger house, make me famous, give me followers, give me beautiful wife, wonderful children, give me a son, give me this, give me. All material. None of that will satisfy the soul, and all of it is temporary. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, the wise do not partake in these acts of sense gratification, knowing that they are temporary in nature. They don't do it, and they lead to misery only. And person may say, well, how can it lead to misery? I enjoy eating. I enjoy sex life. I enjoy this. I enjoy my fame. I enjoy my money. I enjoy my house. I enjoy all these things. Well, you're going to lose it at the time of death. Krishna, one of his features is the chakra of time. And that chakra kills every living entity in time. No one can escape the death that comes with coming to the material world. Now, in Brahmaloka, if you go to Brahmaloka, you go right back home, back to Godhead from there. And we just read that a moment ago, too. Although you do still have free will, you could fall down in the material world. So it's a razor's edge, Prabhupada says. And in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Brahma bhuvanal loka, loko yam karma bandhana. So if you're bound in karma, it doesn't matter if you're in the highest or the lowest planets, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death will take place. So we need mercy because we are addicted to forbidden activities. All of Western society is addicted to forbidden activities. Think about it. Go down the interstate and you'll see every sign is trying to addict you to smoke this, drink that, buy this, shop here, go to this destination for your ultimate sense gratification, right? Beautiful women are presenting all of these desirable objects for the senses. Everywhere you look, on every television station, on the internet, on the billboards, everywhere you go, people are selling sense gratification as if it is the goal of life. But the senses are a network of paths leading to death. We chant that when we chant for our prasadam. We ask the Lord. We say like that in that prayer. And so we acknowledge that the senses will never deliver us back to the spiritual world unless they're engaged in the service of Hrishikesh, who is the master of the senses. And when we give our senses back to the Lord, then they become perfected in their service, in their prescribed duty. That's our prescribed duty. We have a prescription. We're sick. When you go to the doctor, what does he do? He gives you a prescription. Why? To help you become well. You may not know the nuclear formula for the prescription. You don't know how it's working in the body. It doesn't make sense to you. You can't even pronounce the name of it, of the drug he's giving you. But when you take it, you feel better. So in this age of Kali, there's a prescription for everyone, every man, woman, and child, everywhere. And that prescription is Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam, kalo nasteva, 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 gatirantyataha. And that means that in this age of darkness and quarrel and hypocrisy, where all truth is lost, the holy name of God, the holy name of God, the holy name of God will deliver you. Even in the Bible, it says anyone who calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved. Prabhupada said that when we go out on Sankirtan and someone hears the holy name, they're guaranteed to take a human birth with an opportunity to come to Krishna. Think about that for a moment. How powerful is the holy name of God? How powerful is God? God is all powerful. Simply coming in contact with his name will destroy more sins than you're capable of committing. That's how powerful the holy names of God. Look at the life of Ajamil. This is perfect example. Here's a man who started out right, fell down, went with a prostitute, had 10 children, lucked out naming his 10th child Narayan, a little baby walking around awkward, talking a little funny talk. And at time of death, he's reaching for his baby. He completely forgot Krishna, completely forgot him. But Krishna did not forget Ajamil, because by dint of his previous pious activity, he was able to remember the name of God, even though it was directed not at God, but at his child. And that's why we name ourselves after the Lord. All the spiritual masters gives names that remind you of Krishna, because that's the purpose of this life, is to remember Krishna, to realize that everything that we see, everything that we are, everything we do, everything we offer, we give away. All of this in the Bhagavad Gita is described. This should all be done as a sacrifice to Krishna. Yagyarta karmanonyacha lokoyam karma bandhana. So the idea is do work for Krishna. Then there's no more karma. Because if you've got good karma or if you've got bad karma, you're coming back. You're going to get a material body. Congratulations. A sack of mucus, bile, air, various stools, urine, blood, pus. Think about it. How wonderful. Isn't that wonderful? You can have as many as you want. Krishna's so good. He's rewarding everybody's desire since time immemorial. That's what he says in Bhagavad Gita. You can have all of them you want. But Krishna doesn't desire that you want more material bodies separate from him. He wants you to come back in your own Swarup city, in your relationship of love and devotion and service to the Lord. And in doing that, one can go home, right? Krishna says that one who knows my nature and activities and appearance doesn't take birth in the material world again, but attains to my spiritual abode. Of this, there's no doubt. So we know that we're going back home. So we got to take the medicine. The medicine is that we chant the holy names of God. Now, there's no limit to Nityananda's mercy and no limit to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. Akroda Nityananda Paramahansaraya. And that means that Nityananda doesn't get angry with you. He's not angry with you. Remember when he went to see the dacoits that were cajoling with prostitutes? They were drunken, just like the story of Ajamil. You remember that? Lord Chaitanya did that. Nityananda did that. And he fell down by their feet. He washed their feet with his tears, begging them, please give up this way of life. Come back to Krishna. What did they do to him? They threw a rock and busted his head. So what did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu do? Evoked the Sudarshan chakra. He's coming back to kill him. What did Nityananda do? He fell down before the dacoits and begged the mercy of the Lord for those fallen souls. And he prohibited the Lord from punishing them. Akrodha Nityananda Paramahansaraya. Haribo. That's how good Nityananda is. And that's Balaram. That's Lord Balaram, Krishna's first expansion. Guru of the entire universe. Lord Balaram. So there's no limit to the Lord's mercy. One time the devotees were in India, and I don't know if it was Mayapur or Vrindavan, I can't remember. But one devotee came to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, the devotees are down there with the Shivites smoking ganja. What should we do? Should we excommunicate? Should we give it? Prabhupada said, no. They wanted to know if Prabhupada would accept them back. And Prabhupada said that Nityananda's mercy is unlimited and causeless. That's what we have to look forward to. Even Jesus Christ, when they asked him, Lord, when someone sins against us, should we forgive them? How many times? Maybe 7 times? What did Jesus say? No, I say to you, forgive them 7 times 7 and more, because we're sinful rascals. We have to forgive each other. We can't hold a grudge. So we have to become just like godly, and godly is like these personalities we're discussing, like Nityananda, and of course, Lord Jesus Christ. So we're infected. We're infected. Did you guys know that we're infected? We're infected. What we're infected with? 3 modes of material nature. And that colors the subtle body and creates the next body. And Yamaraj knows that from your past performance, he can understand what your future life will be. It just said that in this particular thing. So we get another body according to our past activities in this material world. And those bodies could be either in the lower planetary systems, middle planetary systems, or upper planetary systems. But it doesn't matter if there's pain and suffering in the lower planetary systems mixed in the middle planetary systems where we are, or happiness in the heavenly planets. It doesn't matter. There's still places of death, and everything will be lost. So it ends up in complete uselessness unless we add Krishna. We add Krishna, then everything else becomes perfect. Krishna says, Neha Bikrama Nashosti, Pratyavayo Navijite, Svapamapyasya Dharmasya, Trayate Mahato Biyat. In this endeavor, there is no loss. There is no diminution. And a little advancement on this path can protect one even from the greatest type of fear, which is falling down again into the lower species. We don't want to do that. So the idea is that the embodied soul, it may be restricted from sense enjoyment in these processes that we're talking about of tapasya, of atonement, right? We may be restricted from these things. But restricting the senses from their objects and getting a higher taste, one becomes fixed in consciousness. Krishna says that in 259 in the Bhagavad Gita. So we have to restrict our senses. We have to be the master of our senses, or they will master you. And their mastery will lead you to another material body and to a load of karmic reaction, whether it's good or bad. But we don't want that. So we must uproot these desires that we have for material life. And when we understand the supreme absolute truth, the Vedanta, and we understand that specifically Srimad Bhagavatam, which we're studying, then that is the medicine that will cure this repeated birth and death scenario that we're living in. Okay? So all of these various yoga systems that Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita, Ashtanga, Karma, Sankhya Yoga, Jnana Yoga, all of it leads to love of God, to Bhakti Yoga. So Bhakti Yoga is what Krishna relishes. These other activities are given up. When we step off into the transcendental platform, you're not worried about karma, you don't have any. You don't have to worry about Ashtanga Yoga because your mind is already fixed on Krishna through the Bhakti process. You don't have to go through all those austerities. Not necessary. You don't have to worry about developing knowledge. Rajavidya Rajaguya, Pavitramita Mutamam, Prajakshagamam Dharmyam, Susukam Kartamavyayam. This is the king of all education. It's the most secret of all secrets. It's the most confidential knowledge concerning God. And it gives direct perception of the soul by personal realization. It is everlasting and it's joyfully performed. So who could deny a process so sublime as this bhakti process? And it's recommended in all the shastras by all the avatars. It's being recommended here as well. No other process, no other tapasya, no other brahmacharya, all these things. They won't deliver you back to the spiritual world. They'll make you sinless here, but then you're still on the razor's edge. What if you slip again? Like Ajamila fell down. What if you become attracted again? It said when he saw the lusty activities of the prostitute and the Sudra, that he was flooded with all of these desires that had been held in his heart for all these years. And therefore he pursued it for the rest of his life. And he gave up his Brahminical activities. That could happen to us just like that. So we have to be careful. So non-devotees cannot be purified by acts of atonement for their own rehabilitation because their desire is not uprooted. Their desire is not uprooted. In another chapter in Bhagavatam, it says that if you burn a field, the field comes back. It grows again because the seeds have not been destroyed. You have to actually burn the seed. You have to burn it to where it can't live any longer. It has to stop. And there's only one process for doing that. And that process is devotional, loving service to the Supreme Lord, the absolute truth. And even the Yamadutas know this. Even the Yamadutas know. Because when the Vishnu Dutas requested information about the absolute truth and spiritual life, why they were trying to punish this Ajamila, what did they do? They answered intelligently. They had been educated by Yamaraj. They were told about Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They were actually told, and they discussed that. So those who have deviated from prescribed duties are called karmis. We used to say that word at the temple, karmis. It's almost like a degrading thing that we would say about people. Oh, those are karmis, and it kind of felt bad saying it in a way, but right here in this chapter, they're called karmis because they have karma. Good or bad, don't matter, coming back. So we don't want to be karmis. We want to be akarmis, free from karma. We don't want any more karma in our life. So there are three kinds of religious people in this material universe. Irreligious, that's in the mode of ignorance. Semi-religious, which is in the mode of passion. Or religious, which is in the mode of goodness. But all of it is primarily material and materialistic and designed to achieve a goal within this material universe, thinking that somehow or another we'll be able to be happy if we have a few more years to live. There's a song that said, one more day, just one more day, and I'd be satisfied. It's not possible. You're going to be asking for one more day eternally, okay? And the body is going to give up. It's not going to work out. So we must act and work and become free from these material modes and let our attraction run to Krishna. Let our desires run to Krishna. You're not going to lose anything. You're not going to be bereft of anything. You're going to gain everything for doing that. And it's not going to be a problem. So what we want to do is we want to understand our predicament and how to get out of here. So one of the ways, there's non-devotional processes, but one of the verses in the Bhagavad Gita describes that the devotees of the Lord are released of all kinds of sinful reactions because they eat food which is first offered to the Lord in sacrifice. That give you an idea, right? So the idea is offer everything to the Lord in sacrifice, and you're relieved of all sinful reaction. No more sinful reaction. And Krishna goes on to say, Yeyate mang prapadyante tungstataiva bhajamyaham mama manuvartante manushya parta sarvasha. All of them, as they surrender to me, I reward accordingly. Everyone is following Krishna's path in all respects, don't matter if you're sinful or not. And it's recommended that even in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in 2.3.1, it says whether you're full of all desires, free from all desires, material desires, or desiring liberation, whatever you want, whatever you've got. If you have broader intelligence, you should by all means worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead to receive those benedictions. So there's no alternative to devotional service. Krishna says that himself. And he describes that in the Bhagavad Gita. And he says, Yato yato nischalati manaschanchalamashritam. So he's saying from whatever and wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, you have to withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the intelligence, of the self, of the soul. And if you do that, that's called yoga. Krishna goes on in 647 to say, Yoginam api sarvasham madgatinantaratmana shradanam bhajate yomam same yuktat madomataha. And that means of all yogis, he who abides in me with great faith, worship of me, and transcendental loving service is the most intimately united with me and is the highest of all yogis. So this is what is recommended in the Bhagavad Gita. It goes on later in the Bhagavad Gita to even say, don't worry about it. Sarvadharma paritaja, mamekam saranambraja, aham tvam sarva papebhyo, mokshaishami masucha. Abandon all varieties of man-made religion, or religion that's designed for karma kanda or jnana kanda, for reward in the world, and simply just surrender to Krishna. He will protect you. He will deliver you from all sinful reactions. It's guaranteed. And he says, do not fear. Do not fear. Don't worry about it. I got you. I got this. I got your back. Not a problem. No fear, no worries, no problems. And look, if the holy name is powerful enough to save the sinful Ajamila, who maintained a prostitute and lived completely opposite of all his Brahminical training and so forth and so on, if it can do that, it can certainly work for you and me. So these are just a few thoughts regarding this chapter. And then in the next week, there will be a continuation of the discussion between the Vishnu Dutas and the Yama Dutas. And the conversation gets pretty heavy, gets a little heated. And I'm not going to give you any indication as to how that all works out right now. I want you to be in suspense. Of course, Rakesh and some of these great devotees here, they already know the story. It's all right. What you got, Rakesh?
I have a question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
I know this is going to come up in the following chapters, but if you could give us a preview of either all of the offenses to the holy name, or especially the offense, because in the Shastras is said that one of the offenses is to be inattentive while chanting the holy names. So either that one in particular or any of the offenses, if you could give us a preview of the offenses that we should avoid when we're chanting.
Well, I want to give you instead an alternative perspective. And this is discussed in the next chapter. And it says that even if the holy name, now I'm saying as devotees, there are 10 offenses against the holy names. We used to recite them every morning before we chant our japa. Inattentive chanting, all of that. You're chanting with a material desire, et cetera, and so on. There's so many different ones. But the next chapters say that even inattentive chanting, even distracted chanting, even chanting for whatever purpose, it still delivers you from all sinful reaction. The powerful holy name is a medicine. So we can study the 10 offenses, and we shall, and we should know them. And when we're chanting, we should try to, maintain a non-offensive state, because Ajamil chanted out of complete desperation, and therefore it was offenseless chanting. It was offenseless chanting because he was in anxiety, frightened, completely frightened. And so therefore there was no offensive. What is offensive to Krishna? If you stop and think about it for a minute, what's offensive to you? It's a simple thing. If you're being neglected, if you're being ignored, if you're being denigrated, that's offensive to you. So the same thing exists for Krishna. I mean, it's a simple thing. These rules and regulations are there for neophytes, because devotees that already have developed a loving attraction for the Lord naturally follow those things automatically. And, Rakesh, what we used to do back when devotees would join the temple, and I had the Bhakti program, we were running through the meal, man. I'm telling you, it was hardcore, buddy. But nowadays, we don't do that anymore. What we do is when we meet a nice boy, yes, he's drinking, yes, he's smoking, yes, he's going out with a variety of ladies and so forth. I've used the word ladies loosely, but he's going out, with all these women. Instead of disturbing his mind and telling him all of these rules, all these regulations, all these things he's going to have to follow, and discouraging him, we encourage him in the way of devotion, like Krishna talks about in Bhagavad Gita. Do not disturb the mind of the ignorant, but instead encourage him in the way of devotion. So it's like this. Okay, so the horse has been bad. You could beat it. You could beat the mule or the horse or whatever. But if you give it a carrot, it's going to go where you want it to go. It's going to do what you want it to do. So we have to be practical in this life of devotion. And we have to understand that the carrot is love of God. That's the happiest place. That's the high that we're looking for, that we're not getting in our drugs, that we're not getting in our fame and our prestige, that we're not getting in our bank account, that we're not getting in our economic development. We're not getting those kinds of pleasures. That pleasure is a pleasure that goes beyond, transcends the senses, the ordinary senses of the body. So I wanted to do that because if we get into the 10 offenses, we'll be here for a few minutes, Rakesh. So I just want to kind of cut that down because I wanted to read something else to you, if you don't mind. So in the ultimate end of this discussion, we can see that Ajamila, and we're going to go back over this a few more times in the next chapters, the next two chapters. But in the ultimate goal, we are being taught by this lesson of Ajamila that the holy name of Lord Narayan is so powerful that it can take even a demon, a dacoit, somebody who's completely irreligious, and deliver them. When they're marked to go to hell, if they say the name of God at the very end, and we know those verses in Bhagavad Gita, whatever one remembers at the time of death, that he shall attain to without fail. Without fail. So he says Narayan, even though it was done neglectfully, inattentively, see what I'm saying, Rakesh? It was even directed to something else. It wasn't even directed to God. Still, he got full benefit. He was welcomed back into the spiritual world, and he was worshipped. He was worshipped. He went back home in a golden vimana. We're not going to talk about that yet. But you know, he did. And he did it simply by calling the name of God. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so kind that he gives us these verses called Shishastikam. Cheto Darpanam Marjanam Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam Shreya Kairabhya Chandrika Vitaranam Vidya Vadhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam Pratipradam Pranam Rita Shvadanam Sarvatma Shnapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. What does that mean? Glories to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. Bang! There it is. Right? So the Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon of the Lord. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. Goes on to say, Nam Nama Kari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis, Tatrapati Niyamita Smaranena Kala, Itad Drishi Kripa Bhagavan Mamapi, Durdaiva Midrishami Hajani Nanaraga. And what that means is, oh my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to the living beings. I think that's enough. I don't know what else you need. All benediction to the living beings. That's pretty good. And thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna Govinda. Your transcendental energies, you've invested all of those in your holy name. They're not even hard and fast rules. This answers your question too. They're not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. Oh, my Lord, your holy name alone, you've allowed us to approach you, but unfortunately, I have no attraction for them. This is what Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said. Now, he's saying this for our benefit. And he goes on to say, Trinadapi Sunichena, Terorpi Sahishnuna, Amanina Manadena, Kirtaniya Sadahardi. So what that means is one should just chant the holy name of the Lord in the most humble state of mind, feeling oneself lower than the straw on the street, more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Now, Bhaktivinoda was so kind that he said that, oh, your mind is wandering from the holy name? Chant anyway. Oh, you're offensive to the holy? Oh, chant anyway. If you read his prayer, if you read that, I don't have it with me now, but I'd love to read it to everybody. We'll find that and we'll post that for you. But he goes on down through all of these offenses, like all 10 of them, literally. And he says, what is the solution? Chant anyway. So I'm leaving you with that. All right. And next time it's going to get even better. And the 7 or 8 billion other people who are missing this program tonight, I feel so bad for them. I really do. They could have been absolved of all of their karmic reaction here tonight by simply repeating Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And we chant that every day. We chant with sincere. We don't ask the Lord for bread, for money, for women. Nadanam najanam nasundarim kavitam va jagarisha kamaye. We don't ask for those things. Not women, not money, not fame, not followers, not prestige, none. We don't want it. We just want the Lord's service, birth after birth. That's it. So we'll read the rest of the Shastakam next time together, or we'll go over it. And in the meantime, I wish you all that Krishna will confer all of his blessings on anyone who hears this discourse of Ajamila. And you'll find that at the very end of this, the blessings that come with hearing this story are truly unlimited. So we'll get to that on the next installment. Is there any further questions you guys have tonight? Oh, so I've convinced you then, right? So now there's no excuse, right? That's what Ridananda always used to say, or somebody used to say all the time. They would say, oh, so there's no questions. So everyone is fully convinced that, okay, I'll be watching. All right, guys, y'all are a blessing to me.
Probably, Hare Krishna.
Oh, there you
We
are.
are not probably convinced, but we can't say nothing because probably we can't comprehend everything.
Oh, I see that you're here. We haven't seen you in a long time. Where are you at?
I'm in Guyana.
Oh, you went back home. You went back to Guyana.
Yes.
Okay. You didn't keep in touch. I didn't know. I didn't know you went back to Guyana, but we're glad you're back in the class. So please bring your good questions and reading voice with you next time too, okay?
Sure.
Got any questions now, or we're just about the end of class?
I actually had wanted to ask you one thing.
Okay, we'll make it quick.
They said Krishna is sitting in the heart. Is it true or false?
No, it's true. Krishna is in everyone's heart as Paramatma. Super soul.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then if that's the case, it's they said when you get transplant, if the heart has to change, what happens? He moved from that heart and you go into another heart. What happens then?
You do that every time you change bodies, don't you? Probably done it a few trillion times, so I don't think it's too extraordinary. So yeah, those are technical questions. But the one thing that I would say is that, even in this body, you can travel astrally if you want. You can get Lahima, Mahima. You can get all these perfections and siddhas. You can do all that stuff. But none of it will bring any satisfaction. None of it. So ultimately, until we're reconnected with the source of our very life, the soul of our very soul, until we're reconnected with that love, we can't really experience the love that we want for everything else. So it's our job then to become yogis, but in our perfected state of yoga, a transcendental yoga is bhakti yoga. The other yoga forms are really confined to the material universe primarily because they'll elevate you to Brahman realization. Mystic yoga will take you to Brahman realization, maybe, right? But you still fall down from those platforms. The only place you won't fall down from, the only place is when you replace your desire to enjoy separately from Krishna and place it back with Krishna. That's the key to this whole process. And Manmana Bhava Bhakto Majjiji Nam Namaskaru. Krishna says, just remember me, think of me always. Become my devotee. That's all Krishna's asking. He's giving you everything. What's he asking for? You got nothing? You got nothing. You ain't got any money. Krishna don't need your money. He don't need your fame, your talent. What does he need? He needs your love. That's all. So offer a little love. Patram pushpam palam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati. Offer your food with, just start with that. Just offer your food to God. And that's a great start. Because you got to eat 3 times a day. It's a good time to remember Krishna. All right, guys, I'm going to check out of here. You guys are really great. I love you all very dearly, by the way. And I hope that we can expand this more and more. But you know, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, such a soul is very rare. So don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if there's not many who are really, really serious. Okay? But you guys are, and I'm glad you're here with us tonight. So I'm signing off, and I'll see you next week with the next installment. Hare Krishna. Have a good evening. All right. Haribol. Haribol.